I have to be careful because some of this stuff we want to be a surprise at APES, but I think there's some thinking I can share here. So
you've shaped the visuals for the Super Bowl halftime show, Coachella, the MTV VMAs. You've won an Emmy for building the world's biggest extended reality stage using Unreal Engine.
In my previous life, I designed over 200 arena and stadium tours. It's a lot.
Already doing what you were doing and operating at the peak of live production, what made you want to pivot into Web3 and into the crypto space to begin with?
I get it all the time. People go like, oh, is crypto still around? Is it still a thing? Like pump fund, hyperliquid. It all starts off small and it gains a lot of momentum. Otherside's been in pre-release since July. It's a preview of a living world with scale, story, real utility. I think is one of the most ambitious projects to ever take on in this shape, and it's starting to take shape, right? Like,
is Chris Dixon talking about Ape Chain and the other side?
I think AI is going to impact everything that people do. And I think especially as it relates to UGC, it's going to democratize what were once very technical things into things that everyday users can understand.
Hi, Figge. Thanks so much for your time. It's a huge pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Please correct me if I get anything of the following wrong. So for over a decade, you've been the co-founder and creative director of Possible Productions, the firm responsible for designing the live visuals for some of the biggest moments on the planet, basically, which includes like massive arena and stadium visuals for Ariana Grande, for Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, Paul McCartney, Childish Gambino, and many others. You've shaped the visuals for the Super Bowl halftime show, Coachella, the MTV VMAs, League of Legends Worlds, tournaments, and many other events. You've won an Emmy for building the world's biggest extended reality stage using Unreal Engine. Then, in 2021, you pivoted into Web3, co-founding and serving as CEO of WENEW alongside Beeple. And besides launching your own collection called 10KTF, you also collaborated with many brands from like Louis Vuitton to Gucci to Wimbledon. Then WENEW got acquired by Yuga Labs, 10KTF got acquired by Possible, and of course today you're heavily involved in building the other side. I hope I didn't leave out too much, but your CV is so insane. And this brings me to my first question. After winning an Emmy, already doing what you were doing and operating at the peak of live production, what made you want to pivot into Web3 and into the crypto space to begin with?
Yeah. Well, look, everything you said was right. So great capturing that background. In my previous life, I designed over 200 arena and stadium tours. It's a lot. And Malcolm Gladwell has this like 10,000 hour rule where like you have to do something for 10,000 hours to get really good at it. And I think I'd done that multiple times in the thing I did before. There was something about seeing this new wave of what was happening in crypto. I've always kind of been interested in previous cycles in crypto, and I think there's a lot of people who have seen that. They saw Bitcoin the first time it came out, Ethereum. It's like, you know, they see that it comes through, and each time it comes through, it becomes more interesting. This wave in particular dealt a lot with content, and that was something that I had a really big, deep background in. And that's probably why I saw this as a translation of the stuff I was doing before, but on a new surface. You know, a lot of the time, these brands were musicians. They would come up to me and they would take something that was like digital and abstract, like an album or a video game, and they would want to physicalize it in a room. They would want to like actually make it stand up in an arena. And a lot of the time now, I feel like we're maybe going in the opposite direction. We're trying to take like these physical concepts and we're trying to put them in digital scape, right? Like we're kind of going in the opposite direction. So yeah, I think that, you know, awards and stuff, all of that is probably just byproducts, not really the goal of like where you're trying to go. I think if you're like, oh, I should do this for money or I should do this for an award, like that probably won't work out. But if you are going after something because there's a bigger like human reason behind it, I think you wind up, you know, getting those things along the way.
Yeah, makes complete sense. Like, what was the first What was your first, point of touch when it comes to crypto? Like, was it Bitcoin? Was it Ethereum? Was it smart contracts? Like, what was your
Yeah,
first?
it was 2013. It was around my birthday. I was born in April. So it was around April of 2013. And I had first heard about Bitcoin, and it was about, I think it was about $100. And it was through Magic the Gathering online exchange called Mt. Gox. And this is a very popular site, but it was like, it was so, the interface was so bad, like everybody was just wiring money to this exchange in Japan and then kind of like trading it through this website that would constantly get DDoSed and crash. And it was great because you would see it go up, but then it would get DDoS and then nobody could get their money out and it would dip. And so it was a little too volatile, a little too scary. This is kind of like pre Coinbase, right? And then the next wave was 2017. It just kind of broke out all over the news with ICOs and stuff like that. And that's first exposure to smart contracts, to tokens. It was really interesting seeing that type of stuff set up. But I think I was too deep in I was too deep in my current profession to really go like, there's something bigger here. And then when it happened in 2021, actually, a really good friend of mine, guy who worked at the studio, was Beeple. And he really got taken up into this thing in a big way. And so I had kind of a front row seat to see the perspective on how content being tokenized could change. It could really build communities. It could align interests. It could, bring back a sustainable resource towards creators that they can create with their own voice. And I think there was so much of that in 21 and 22. Like there were just so much going on. Unfortunately, I think there were also like big bad actors too, and that sent us in a total bear because like all of these institutions like were just plagued by greed. And so I think it's the kind of thing where like every 4 years, so it's like 2013, 2017, 2021, and now here we are. It's 2025, and I get it all the time. People go like, "Oh, is crypto still around? Is it still a thing?" Like, and I tell people it comes in cycles and you're just not paying attention, and it's been 4 years and a lot has happened. Like a lot has changed since the last cycle that's going to make this next wave really interesting.
Yeah, definitely. You just touched on it a little, but like, what is the most unexpected lesson you learned about, the Web3's creative culture, especially coming from tightly controlled, polished environments of like global live productions into this, degenerate, open-minded, crazy space?
Yeah, I mean, crypto Twitter has its own culture, its own language, and its own codes. So it's it doesn't follow the same conventions that traditional brands would follow. And I think that's one of the reasons why when traditional brands come in, a lot of them struggle because they don't take the time to learn the codes. They don't take the time to really get involved in the community. They see it as, the worst ones see it as oh yeah, it's like buying ad space or something like that. But the ones that were most successful were the ones that deeply integrated into the culture. And, I think in crypto, authenticity is more important than pedigree. I think people really want stuff that is congruent with the culture they believe in, with the goals that they have. And I actually think the people who show up into the space that recognize the people who show up correctly actually get celebrated asymmetrically, because it takes a lot of effort, especially in these big companies, to get them on board. But I also think that sometimes crypto Twitter's expectations of what's actually possible for a company to do is not necessarily in line with reality either. There's crypto Twitter moves on a 24-hour cycle, and you have to be able to have products and conversations that move at that tempo. But when you're talking with people in manufacturing or fashion or something like that, they plan 18 months out. it's very difficult. It is actually very difficult to do collaborations that have to move at crypto Twitter speed if you are a big legacy company. It's really difficult to put those together.
Before we dive into the other side, I obviously also have to ask you about 10KTF and also on how it all started, which you just talked about.
Yeah.
Like, that's linked to your friendship with Beeple. Like, when did you guys first meet? I suppose it was way before the everyday sale and NFTs blowing up.
Oh yeah, we probably met 2009 or 2010. So we worked together for over a decade on a bunch of stuff. And it was all digital art. Actually, I was in LA, so I'm from LA, and I studied film. And one of my first jobs was working on films. But in visual effects, I really wanted to. I saw like some of the stuff that I was really attracted to was like 3D animation, you know, being able to use some of these more advanced programs to suspend people's disbelief. And I took the time off to learn. And at the time, it was like it was kind of hard to. It was the early days of like YouTube, so like there weren't really great resources, but you could reach out to people on the internet. And yeah, there was a guy in Wisconsin whose day job was in web design, and I thought his work in terms of digital art was actually like superb. Like I thought he was really great. And so I reached out to him, and we had always been in touch for a long time. And, we worked on gigs together. We would trade project files. So I would kind of like learn how he would do those setups. I was working on a studio. Like the whole conceit of my original studio is that there's not really a firm in the world at the time that said, hey, live entertainment is going to be a thing for media to be involved in. So it would usually be a job that would fall into a visual effects house or a post house or a commercial house. And none of those are really built for live events in the same way. Um, and I think prior to Possible, a lot of the reasons why I wound up starting Possible, I wasn't really an entrepreneur before. I would probably still be working at that first company if it was just, if things went differently. But I noticed that all of these firms, whether they were a commercial house or visual effects house or a post house, they wouldn't reinvest back into the product. They would use the money, the margin to shore up maybe other parts of the business that weren't doing so well, or they would just take a payday. And, after a couple of years of leading these projects in a freelance capacity at all places all over LA, I started to wonder like, I looked around and I'm still driving the same Honda Civic Hybrid, for the first 4 years. And I'm like, I think there should be something different. So I started Possible because I was like, I think the thesis is clear. There's a big market for this. You just have to invest into the infrastructure to be able to deliver better quality of these things. So I would work on like render farms and scaling that up and making sure there were good systems in place. And how do we work differently to leverage that type of scale? And so, when I'm working with somebody like Beeple, he would create his projects and then we would plug that into this overall system. We kind of like built that together over a very long period of time. Yeah, we built that over a long period of time. And it's to the point where all the way up until right before Web3, like if you actually go to the Possible website, right? If you go to psbl.co, and I think it might be on the info page or the about page or something, we have this collage of all of the different like shows that we worked on and the team that's with it. And you'll see me and him like at the Super Bowl halftime show. And like we just have never changed it because it's just that is what Possible is. Like we are a bunch of digital artists that, you know, that were making things before tokenization of art was a thing. Like we were working on commercial art. He's actually one of a kind in a way because it wasn't just commercial art. He always made time for his own work. Like he always made the piece every day ever since I've known him. He made short films. And I think that takes a lot of focus and determination and grit to be able to do. But when he went and, had a pretty meteoric rise into, tokenized digital art, he also had a lot of great ideas on what could be good for Web3. And so one of those ideas was what we started WENEW around, which was actually the tokenization of moments, almost like Top Shot. So Top Shot's a platform that would tokenize basketball moments. And these basketball, it would be like LeBron's dunk, like you can trade that moment in time. And we thought, wow, that's actually pretty restrictive. What if you could trade anything? Like, what if you could trade, you go to the Michael Jackson state, you get the moonwalk license. What if you could trade 1,000 editions of the moonwalk, or Neil Armstrong landing on the moon? What if you could collect that moment, and it's officially licensed by the estate and stuff? So that's actually he was so busy he couldn't really get, even though he's like come up with this idea, he didn't have time for it because he was doing so much of his own art. And so I put together a proposal on like what that could look like, and it was just so clear that this is like a great idea. We went out to market with it and we raised money to go do it. And I thought we would have like a demand problem. Like I thought we would have to do all this education to get people excited and interested to collect these moments. But we actually wound up having a supply problem. I think the financialization of memory is really complicated, right? Like cuz then somebody's memory is more valuable than this other person's memory, and well, I want a minimum guarantee on my memory because I think it's relatively more. It's this very complicated thing that gets set up. And it's funny because in my old life, when I was doing all these tours, I had a line out the door, like a year waiting list. If you wanted to, like, if I was going to work on your show, you got to contact me 6 to 12 months in advance, right? And when I got into Web3 and I was doing these moments, I felt like I was going door to door to like 40 different people, knocking on the door, going like, please let me work with you, right? And like nobody wanted to take the leap. And so that was definitely a change of pace where you go from one profession where you're very known, you've got an Emmy, like you can do things. And then you go to this new profession where you actually have a good idea, but nobody wants to take the leap with you. And this actually got frustrating for me, for our whole team, which was full of aces. Like everybody was great. And in one weekend of frustration, I noticed Artifact, they did a bunch of shoes, and they did a CryptoPunks Artifact shoe. And everybody in Web3 loved it. They loved it. And I thought it was really cool. But I looked at that and I was like, you could actually do that, but like for Bored Apes, and you could actually do it for all 10,000 Bored Apes, and actually do it by tomorrow. Because with the render farms, with the infrastructure that I have, I know how to set up the project file and make it look like a product shot, and then basically do a 10,000 frame sequence that renders on a render farm. So like by tomorrow morning, I'll have 10,000 different shoes. And so I did that for fun on a weekend, and it really took off. I think part of it was like, so my first NFT was a Beeple. I bought one of the first ones that came out. My second NFT was a Bored Ape. And so I was really in the Bored Ape community, and I just love the culture. I think it was so funny in that period to be on Clubhouse and kind of like be acting like an ape on Clubhouse. And
Yeah.
and I kept it pretty low and under the radar. Part of it was I think I was still trying to make the original Moments platform work, but the other part of it was, um, you know, I was pretty put off by how many people were coming out of the woodwork and showing. Um, there'd be a lot of people who would say, "I've worked with Nike, I've worked with Adidas, I've worked with," and they would just list all of their brands, and then be like, "And this is for sale. Come buy it because I'm legit." And then they would, I would definitely buy it, and then they would disappear or something overnight. There's all of these rugs happening like crazy, and we didn't want to be one of those. We wanted to actually put something out that was fun and good and stick around and try to deliver something big on it. And so I actually got so much of a response that first weekend when I did the shoes. I didn't even know it, but Twitter has a DM limit. Like you could only get 1,000 DMs in 24 hours. And so my Twitter broke. I mean, I used Twitter
Wow.
for a long time, but I've never gotten that kind of like reaction. And you could see why, because like you give it to
Yeah.
one ape, they give it to their apes, who give it to their apes. And you get these like very intense explosions of interest. And so we started doing that for all the communities, and we realized all of these communities are kind of silos right now. You could build a community of communities based off this composable IP, and people could further monetize, further exercise their IP rights around these tokens, and we can give them the tooling to be able to do that. And we can wrap this into a story that people are participating in. So that was a big part of 10KTF. And I think another aspect of it was just making sure that we came out with something every week. Like, usually when you're coming out with products, you want to be on a 2-week feature cycle. Like every 2 weeks, you actually do an upgrade with a feature. But every week we would post something. So on our bye weeks, we would focus more on storytelling and, commentary on the space. But then every other week we would do a feature. And if you actually look now at, I've been spending most of the year on Otherside. For years, we've seen glimpses, cinematic here and a test there. And now you're seeing like Otherside's been in pre-release since July. It's a preview of a living world with scale, story, real utility. I think is one of the most ambitious projects to ever take on in this shape. And it's starting to take shape, right? But what's really cool is that we are publishing something. We're aiming for every 2 weeks, but right now we're publishing faster than that. We're publishing multiple times a week right now, bringing on avatars. Yesterday, we just dropped in, a soccer pitch, and we're just continuously dropping that stuff because as opposed to a big bang kind of launch, like most platforms actually go out with an MVP and then just iterate and they try to find what's the sticky thing. I think the model of going all in on one major release actually is not the best thing for your community. It's not the best thing for the industry. I think it's better to come out with an MVP and iterate on it and build momentum. And a lot of the stickiest stuff in the space right now, if you're looking at Pump Fund, Hyperliquid, it all starts off small and it gains a lot of momentum. Axiom, like all of this stuff gains momentum because they're iterating and finding the fun in it, right? And we're starting to see that with Otherside. With every release that comes out, we see the total number of people over a 6-hour period gradually increasing. And that's what we hope to get to a critical mass as we move forward in the coming months.
Like before we come to Otherside, I suppose you can't say too much, but for anyone tuning in from the 10KTF community, I just had to ask as well, is there some form of alpha or anything that you're allowed to share?
Yeah, so the 10KTF, I think Yuga had a lot of different properties and it went with this roll-up model, kind of like Disney has a lot of different IPs. That doesn't really work in Web3 because in order for it to create the strongest network effect, there does have to be a sense of tribalism. You do need a cult leader that is associated with each project. And so Yuga's actually had a lot of success by spinning out projects that it was struggling to keep everything balanced on. It was hard to keep focused. So we've now spun out Heavy Metal Legends of the Mara, Meebits, Moonbirds, 10KTF, and each one of those is deep with teams that are dedicated to making those things happen. And for 10KTF in particular, they've been working on a lot of things, and a bunch of it is related to Otherside. So I think we're going to see some of that stuff in the coming months too.
Dope. Okay, Otherside. Again, having designed massive stages and coming from a place of deep understanding when it comes to 3D workflows, especially Unreal Engine, what is the single biggest mindset shift you had to make when building experiences for the finality of a live event in contrast to the infinity of a metaverse experience?
It's funny you ask that because they are fundamentally different things. Like when you sell tickets to a live show, it's happening. You have no choice. It's going to happen on that date. And you are designing and building and iterating to optimize for that date. When it comes to building a product, it's not necessarily that. You can re-strategize. You can prioritize something different. You can wait for the right moment in the market. You can time things out to be in a meta. And those are all levers that you don't really have when you're working on, a big live television event or a live concert or festival or an esports event, like IRL stuff has so much logistics that it relies on you locking into some of those choices. I think here you could actually be done with something. It could be on the shelf and you can just wait for the right moment. And that's a very different way to look at this. We're also dealing with a global audience. We have to take into effect, like, there's more variables here. There's more variables here. We have to take into account the idea that if we do an event at noon, that means there's a part of the world where it's not noon, where they're asleep and they can't participate in it, and we're not testing against them. And, different time zones might actually get you different results. So there are some unknowns here with where the PMF is with different parts of the world, because you're not able to test all parts of the world at the same time. You have to kind of like rotate through. And so that's another, having a global audience is another tricky aspect to it. I would say the third is the fact that, and I see this as an advantage. I think some people would see it as a risk, but I see it as an advantage. A benefit in Web3 is that a lot of people own tokens for Otherside. They own other deeds and they own Kodas. We are all financially aligned. Our interests are aligned to build together, because the more people that build together, it's not really all on Yuga. Like, success to me is if I'm asleep and somebody plans and throws their event in Otherside, where they build out an experience in Otherside, and I had nothing to do with it. Like, that is success. And I think that Web3 is uniquely aligned to do that, because the incumbents for UGC are massive and they haven't been disrupted in years. I'm talking about Roblox, Minecraft. Like, Roblox is $100 billion company. They made $3.5 billion last year. And if Otherside can just focus on taking 1% of that, we'd be $35 million in revenue and $1 billion in enterprise value. It's not that we're trying to unseat their entire market cap overnight. It's that we think that there is room for an audience that is disenchanted by the current offerings, right? We think we can offer better terms for developers that are tired of those existing offerings and the economic model behind them. I think a differentiated offering with a Web3 creator-first ethos could hit massive scale.
You put that so nicely. Disenchanted by the current offerings.
Well, the latest Roblox event, it was big news that for every dollar they take in, they're now giving creators 38 cents instead of 35 cents.
Yeah.
That take rate is over 50%.
Crazy.
It's over 60%. And I think one of the cool things about Web3 is the take rate can be much lower because there are other primitives that we can be aligned on that allow everybody to win. So I think that, yeah, disenchanted is the right word. I think developers want better options, and that's what we are going for.
Yeah. Speaking of user-generated content, like, of course, Otherside's main design principle is to be as open as possible and to focus on user-generated content. But given your unique history when it comes to like esports with Riot Games and even designing the Louis Vuitton 200-year anniversary game, how important is it to nail the core gaming side of retention for the user-generated side to truly flourish?
It starts from the beginning. Like, if we actually look at Otherside, people take part in Otherside through a galaxy made of 100,000 virtual lands. And at the center of those lands are worlds based on Yuga collections. We've got the Bored Ape Swamp and the Koda Nexus. And beyond the center lands are lands by community members. And each land is represented by an Otherdeed digital trading card. And on there's resources, there's characters, there's artifacts, there's traits that will come into play for the Otherside resource game. So Otherdeed holders will be in this universe competing, designing, strategizing, hiring, delegating, creating. I think the deeds are going to become the home bases. Resources are going to flow through them. builders and collectors are going to work side by side, and codas are going to supercharge your position, right? But that doesn't mean you have to be a gamer to enjoy Otherside. During this pre-release period, the features with the most traction, they actually haven't been gaming, they've been social. And I think we're all on these social network apps, but Bubbles is actually satisfying a demand for people to connect in a new way. You can actually talk to people you don't know on the internet, whereas, these other platforms are more about a news feed or something else. It's not really a social network in a traditional sense. I think Bubbles have reconnected us with people on the internet. And so that's why I think whether it's a game or a social experience or anything else you can think of, we are building so that other people can bring their stuff in. We provide the tools and infrastructure, and you bring in your imagination. So yeah, you get two things with another deed. You get your land for the resource game, but also you get access to the Otherside development kit, which is a set of tools that allows you to build an Unreal Engine to create next generation blockchain experiences. And I think that it is a very, very big opportunity. I think that, we want the Otherside resource game to have tremendous gravity when it kicks off. But we believe that user-generated content on Otherside could have huge potential that can soon compete directly with UGC incumbents like Minecraft and Roblox, because they're platforms with tens of millions of users that haven't been disrupted in years. And we think we can offer better terms for developers that are tired of those existing offerings and the economic model behind them. So to me, they go hand in hand. There is a world where people are playing this Otherside resource game. They're gathering up all these resources, but also there's an even bigger opportunity beyond gaming, right? And I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think they're actually complementary and they grow each other even more.
100%. I believe this is also why Wiley and Greg mentioned, like from the start, from like 2-3 years ago, that we should think of Otherside more as a platform and not as a game. You just put that very, very nicely.
Right.
I've also asked Greg on why the shift to Unreal Engine from Unreal Engine 5.4 to 5.5 was such a big deal. And obviously, you also gave us a massive teaser a couple of weeks ago. So essentially, please correct me if I'm wrong on this, you're giving us all the tools we need to vibe code inside of the ODK and inside of the Otherside, like in the future, basically unlocking a Claude, Grok, ChatGPT, Gemini visual code enhancer for building out virtual worlds and experiences or other deeds, which is such a crazy unlock. And I've done some digging over the last couple of weeks. I don't believe there is anything similar on the market. Like there is nothing like it. So my question is, how important do you think first mover advantage is when it comes to such a massive feature?
I think AI is going to impact everything that people do. And I think especially as it relates to UGC, it's going to democratize what were once very technical things into things that everyday users can understand. I mean, even you look at like Cursor or Lovable or any of these other apps, you're having non-technical people use natural language to develop apps that they don't really know what's happening under the hood, but it also kind of doesn't matter if it's an MVP because we're just getting an idea together. We are so just on the Unreal update, we've actually spent a lot of time updating with every version of Unreal, and I don't know that that's actually like the best for the platform long run. I think it's actually better to take an update. Like we just went from 5.3, we didn't take 5.4, we did take 5.5. And the reason why we skipped that update is because if you're spending all your engineering efforts keeping up with every incremental jump, that means you're not making other features. And I would rather stay, first trip and second trip were actually in Unreal Engine 4. So you don't always have to update to the latest thing, but there are more features in 5.5 than in 5.3, like significantly more, especially as it relates to like procedural generation of assets. I think not even diving as deeply as the ODK, the vibe coding bit will probably come more into play with Metaverse markup language. So MML is an open scripting language that lets you create objects that have functions in these digital spaces. So you can create 3D objects, you can create like a television that everybody could watch, a feed that everybody could watch, or entire characters, and you can bring them together into scenes. And MML is something that we are going to be enabling with Otherside's launch. So people will be able to go into social spaces, and in certain areas they'll be able to place their MML objects. Right now, we've demoed this with the jukebox. So you go to the swamp right now and you see there's a jukebox playing. And what people, I don't think they realize it yet, is that jukebox is an MML object. So we can probably switch up the music that's in it. And we can do all of these changes without having to go and rebuild the whole world, which is a multi-hour process. We're actually making Otherside more conversational with MML, because if something happens that morning, instead of going to the developers and rebuilding the whole build to get a set decoration change or a feature, instead we can import it with MML live and make it more mimetic, right? Like we can create an avatar for a thing that just went viral 30 minutes ago, and now we're all walking around as that avatar. So the great thing about MML is it's actually compatible with Vibecoding. You go to ChatGPT today and Vibecode some MML experiences. And that, I think, is actually going to be even sooner than the deeper integration of AI into Unreal.
Now, in the example video you shared, we can clearly see Koda AI being mentioned. And that's just a question I had. Is this possibly a little teaser of what's to come and a special feature that only coders are bringing to the table?
Yeah. So whenever you're dealing with tech as like interesting and magical as AI, you can't help but think of a coda, right? And I think there's different levels of how it's integrated. Like certainly every tech company out there is naming, you've got Gemini, you've got Claude, like everybody personifies their AI with a name. And I think it makes sense to personify characters in the world, like AI as characters in the world of Otherside. Now, that will probably take some advancement to get right, but you can start to see proof of concepts roll out where dialogue is, AI. We don't want to use AI just for the sake of using AI, though. Like there are actually traditional, let's call them like NPCs, that have dialogue trees that can make them feel very rich. I'm not sure that just being able to improvise makes it have more depth. But I do think there is an opportunity if you are talking to characters that can store memory about you. And if you say, hey, I'm from LA, and that if you see them 2 weeks later, that that character can come up to you and say, hey, how's the weather today in LA? Like that's kind of a magical interaction that I think the world can be populated with. And especially if you're mixing that in with other real people, like that just makes it a more sticky place to stick around from a social aspect. Like there's just so much richness that we can pump into this thing. But all of this is going to be incremental, like I think if we just have to kind of calibrate expectations and look at each test that comes out every 2 weeks and see like, is this a surprise? Where is this at? Do we always want it to be farther along, but getting things out there at a production level is really important. I'll say I think Otherside, because we're building in public, we have the latitude, especially because we're constantly shipping, we have the latitude to ship something that may be a little off. And part of that is discovery. Part of that is the advantage that we keep is that we don't super gloss something. Like we try out an idea before it's super glossed just to see if people even care about it. And I think that a lot of dev studios would actually like that. A lot of game studios, a lot of people who are working on social networks, they would love to be able to test in public like that, but they don't. Like there's a lot of fear against like shipping the wrong thing. And I hope that the culture we build on Otherside is one for at least a time period where we say, hey, we're shipping this thing. Like we dropped in soccer yesterday. If there's a bug, we're going to fix it in like the next week. But like, do you even care about soccer? And like that's the more important test before we like, really polish things down, is figure out like what is it that people even care or are excited and what's sticky and what's not.
So now with the Avatar documentation released in early September, we are already seeing like tons and tons of different playable avatars joining in the other side. But next up on the roadmap are Voyagers 2.0.
Yep.
Please give us a little walkthrough of like the changes and upgrades coming to Voyagers 1.0, and if some of those changes will also be reflected in apes, mutants, coders, and all avatars uploaded by users, because I suppose we are about to enter the world of cosmetics.
I have to be careful because some of this stuff we want to be a surprise at APES, but I think there's some thinking I can share here. So, we have a lot of systems that people can participate in without being a hardcore dev, right? We've got stickers, we've got emotes, and there's a new system in particular that we have been working on, and that's the new Voyager. See, Yuga and our partners, we've invested millions of dollars and thousands of hours on avatars. I'm talking bored apes, mutants, meebits, moonbirds, kodas, so many, that it just realized like it's not realistic for people who are forming their community to have to invest that much to participate in Otherside. So we've created a new Voyager. And with Voyager, we really wanted to build something that was around collecting. Voyager is an open avatar system. It's built on open standards, and we've designed it with digital collector culture in mind. We see it as a digital bear brick or the next premium digital vinyl toy, which, easier said than done. I know those are big statements, and they basically require us to prove out like distribution and art and making sure that we're amazing at both. And that's what we're hoping that we're going to be able to do for people. Like, we hope that by setting up the right partnerships, people will realize where we can go with Voyager 2 or with the new Voyager. We hope people can realize where we're going with the new Voyager. And we want it to be a system where people are able to bring their communities into Otherside through packs of accessories, through full body, one of ones, or what we did with Murtis, who is like Curtis for mutants, where all 20,000 mutants took a long time to make, but we could represent them with at least Murtis, which is one avatar. Like, we want people to be able to build into that system on the body of this new Voyager. And we think that collection system is going to be like the evolution of a PFP. It's going to be a new digital bear brick or digital vinyl toy.
Okay, so the next question is also one of my personal biggest wishes. The original Koda cam, like from the first trips, was a massive hit. Like selfies and pics were everywhere on my timeline, which proved the demand for high quality stills within the other side, right? And given your background with massive spectacles, will you be opening up a fully fledged spectator mode as well, with the ability to like place virtual cameras? Because when the community suddenly has the option to fly around with an Arri Alexa in their pockets to film inside the other side, it's going to go nuts. Like, in my humble opinion, this would unleash the community's insane potential for high quality cinematic storytelling within the other side and essentially be a Koda Cam 2.0.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up really good points. And I think when we did Apes Come Home, I think one of the most amazing thing was seeing all of that content flood the timelines. And the ape models have so much work put into them, and these environments have so much put into them that it just photographs really well. And you're even seeing things like, the Otherside Photography Club pop up. Right now we're focused. So I think that the Koda Cam is basically, I think that the Koda Cam is basically like Bubbles in a way, where it's a social feature. There's not necessarily a game to it, but there is an art to it. You make your own fun. And we've had a dedicated team on Bubbles, upgrading it every week because we wanted to get it to parity with other group social things like Twitter Spaces and stuff like that. But with Kodacam, we'll probably want that same ethos of like dedicating a team towards making sure that those features are really good and And yes, we definitely have plans for Koda Cam very soon.
Ah, sick. Last time we spoke, you recommended the book Read, Write, Own by Chris Dixon. And so I've got a quote here that I would like your opinion on. He says, Turing tests no longer distinguish real people from bots, and people can no longer tell real from fake media. The right approach is a credibly neutral community-owned network, a blockchain network that makes authenticity a trusted internet primitive. So is Chris Dixon talking about ApeChain and the other side?
I think Chris Dixon, I really look up to him and his thoughts. I think that is a really compelling one. But I think in that quote, he is actually trying to discern how to prove for humanity. How do you distinguish what are real humans versus, AI agents? I actually have a slightly different take on it. I think that AI agents can't get bank accounts. And the way that they'll operate is with crypto wallets because a bot can't KYC, it can't follow the rules of normal banking, but it can transact if it has access to a crypto wallet. And so for me, it's rather than focus on how to separate AI agents and their movements from humans, I'm actually kind of in the other direction of like the answer is to scroll more. The answer is to go harder with it because I think there could be real value created by these autonomous engines all accessing and to me the distinction isn't as important. I think we're already seeing it with smart contract experiments where we're making some systems like recently there's this like NFT strategy movement and we're seeing like these contracts are basically like brand new whale collectors. And I think like is it really that important to distinguish that that was a smart contract whale collector or it was a human whale collector? I don't think it's important right now. I think in the long run it's important, but in the short run, I think we need to figure out how to unlock all new types of stuff that we haven't seen before. And this is part of that. One of my favorite things as a thought exercise is like what could we do now that we couldn't do before? And Amazon is a great take on that for the internet. When Amazon first started, the concept was what if we had a bookstore that was so big it had every book in existence? And like that just wasn't possible before. You couldn't do it because a bookstore it can hold as many books as a building is big. But with the internet, you could actually have many, many, many warehouses holding in aggregate an impossible number of books. And so the internet enabled a bookstore that had every book in the world. I thought that was really interesting. So now what can we do with blockchain? What can we do with blockchain now that we couldn't do before? And those surfaces I like playing with a lot. I think there's a lot of opportunity in Otherside. There's a lot of opportunity on ApeChain to be able to work on that angle of it.
Speaking like coming from the creator side of things again, like obviously I'm personally super excited by AI and everything that it unlocks, but there is also that flip side, right? That it takes away the essence and the creativity and the love and the passion of creating. Like where do you personally stand on all of that? Like it's purely coming from the creative side.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big advocate for artists. I've worked with artists a long time. I worked as an artist for a long time. Like, I think being able to not devalue the intent and the work that an artist does is important. When ChatGPT came out with that Ghibli feature earlier this year and everybody was Ghiblifying everything, my take on it was like, oh, we should 100% be able to Ghiblify anything we want to. But 99% of what I am doing on ChatGPT starts with the word Ghibli right now. So I feel like ChatGPT should give 99% of the revenue it's getting from me and be giving a major cut of that to Studio Ghibli. I think being able to appropriately, especially if they're using the word in the prompt, you know, if you're using somebody else's style descriptively like that, if you're using it as a reference, that should go to the artist. But look, when I first started learning 3D animation, there was something called in-betweening. You would draw your keyframes, and then you would have to draw the frames in between. By the time I was learning animation, like you would set your keyframes in the computer and the computer would draw everything in between. And there's like, big unions full of people. This is a lot of jobs. And you could fight against it. You'd say, no, we absolutely need in betweening. And it's like, you cannot fight the current of like, no, the computer has automated that portion for us now. So like that, while there's an art to it, it will become niche. And that's not really the thing. I'm actually excited watching artists, AI artists. I mean, Beeple is doing a great job. He has a show called Synthetic Theater that's coming out. I think when artists see it as a tool to extend themselves, it's interesting. Here's another thought experiment. Whenever I see AI right now, no matter how good it is, the gut reaction tends to be, well, this is slop, right? And it's just like a slur. This is AI slop. And it might be. But whenever I see a developer use Cursor to code something up, nobody calls it AI slop. Like their mentality is more like, look how much I was able to get done. And I think a lot of really talented artists that I know are tapping into part of themselves as more of a developer than a traditional designer because of that composability. And the truth is, like with a lot of art, the design process has gone through a stack of references. Like whether somebody generates references with Pinterest boards or Figma boards or like pulls all of this influence together, I think AI has really just streamlined all of that stuff into a process where you just can't see the iterative steps anymore, and that's what bothers people about it. But like there's always been, every artist has influences. Every artist is borrowing from somebody that they think is really great, right? And AI just makes that way faster.
Interesting.
AI just makes that AI kind of makes that problematically faster, right? Because when you're not doing the legwork, it is kind of like you're not putting your own thought into it. And I think people can tell the difference between AI work where somebody really thought about it and AI work where there's just kind of like a prompt that they spat out and they were like, this is good enough.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. My final question, like if money wasn't an issue, if time wasn't an issue, what's the one Otherside experience you would love to see being built by the community members at some point in time?
I think one of the cool things about Otherside is this idea of like mass concurrency. This you could bring in not just 100 people, but like thousands of people into these activations. And sometimes that sounds like we need like a more complicated product. We need to spend, a year making a product for that. But I actually even think just normal social experiences with thousands of people are already novel enough to be sticky. Like we just did soccer yesterday, and to see like, 100 people playing soccer in this digital space is like a funny thing to say. And it didn't take that long to make. So I think we're trying to right size like what is the right scope of an activation. But there's so much surface area that people could tap into, like taking existing formats like a Fall Guys or a Tower Defense or something like that, and trying it with, 400 people. Like that is just a wild conceit on top of any existing format that exists. 400 person last man standing Pac-Man, but it's all in 3D. Like there's so many things you can do with it. And I am hoping that folks in the community just really get inspired and try new things out. And we're going to do everything we can to amplify the people that are like shipping stuff that's really interesting, for sure.